So as the stage stands set for our last session, I now invite our chief guest of the session, Mr. Anand Kumar, former Secretary, New and Renewable Energy, and the Chairman, RERA Delhi. May I request Mr. Hemkant Limaye, the Senior Director, Global Marketing, LM Wind, to please join, and Mr. D.V. Giri, Secretary General, IWTMA. And at the very onset, I request Mr. Giri to kindly felicitate Mr. Anand Kumar, and also our special expression of thanks, gratitude to him, with the presentation of this memento.
Giri will introduce to Anand Kumar. He will only ask him and he will speak.
So we have the summary first, no?
So he will do. He is saying he will do.
No, summary of the session.
But no. He said he will introduce him first. That's okay. Now you hand it over to Giri.
Yeah. And may I now request Mr. D.V. Giri for his opening remarks for this session.
Good evening, everyone. What a grand finale to a lovely two-day conference. It started with the presence of Mr. Indushekar Chaturvedi, our present secretary. And there is no better way to close this beautiful valedictory function, where we are going to sum up and we are going to get my colleague and fellow member, Mr. Hemkant Limaye, to sum up whatever was discussed and deliberated in the last 2 days. The presence of none other than, I would say, our fond Anand Kumarji. It was a pleasure working with him when he was Secretary MNRE. He was just not a secretary, he was hands-on. He worked shoulder to shoulder with us. He was the most approachable person to go up and say, sir, this is the problem we have. And he would always say, Giri, don't tell me what you want. Tell me what you want me to do now. You want me to call for a meeting? I'll call for a meeting. Let's finish it now. That was the kind of proactive steps sir has taken. And now, of course, sir is the chairman of RERA. Sir, we are delighted to have you with us. Thank you. With this few words, I now request my colleague, Hemkant Limaye, to quickly sum up as to what we have deliberated. And then we would like to hear from Mr. Anand Kumar, the dream of 500 gigawatts and his mantra as to how we are going to reach. Over to you, Hemkant.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hemkant Limaye, and I have the privilege and honor to be present here at the valedictory session in presence of Shri Anand Kumar IAS, Chairman RERA and former Secretary, MNRE Government of India, and Mr. D.V. Giri, Secretary General, IWTMA, and a veteran of the industry in his own, a person in his own league. Now, as Mr. Giri said, this has been 2 great days of deliberation. I think we have been part of this starting from the beginning, and I think in the context of what we are seeing with regards to COVID and other issues that the country and the world faces, the conference and the exhibition has been a great success. And we also want to take this opportunity to all of us, all of the people who have participated for this 2-day conference. We want to take this opportunity to appreciate their effort. Now, the conference was aimed really at looking at what is in front of us, the challenges that everybody knows, but opportunities that we can sneak out of these challenges. And as Honorable Prime Minister says, apad then gives you opportunity. So the sessions have been generally talking about a problem, but always ending with an actionable plan that we are going to compile and take it to the respective government authorities in form of a white paper. Now the sessions have talked about, and I'll take majority of the sessions. If I leave something, that's only for the plausibility of time, paucity of time, and not because we don't want to include some topics. So in terms of manufacturing, I think we have, the panelists have talked about need for PLI for wind as an important driver to drive further investments in manufacturing from the OEMs and the component manufacturers. That session also talked about measures to enhance grid infrastructure, about growing energy and capacity demands, and how to utilize the novel sources like EVs and data centers to generate demand and balance it with the existing commercial and agriculture demand. The important session was on the regulatory affairs, and it had important participation from our investor IPPs, from regulators, and also industry experts. Currently, while we feel that there is low demand, in long term, when India average utilization, average per capita consumption has to increase, there's going to be high demand for electricity, high demand for energy. Add to that general electrification, as we see in the economy. The electricity will become a primary source of energy by 2050. And then the whole conversation was on bidding structure, what has worked, what has not worked, and in the current regulatory system, what can we do to make existing auctions more effective, and what auction parameters we need to tweak to generate more response and generate more predictability of execution. These are some of the regulatory issues that we discussed apart from DSM, GNA, ancillary services, which will kind of ensure that wind energy is fairly paid, apart from just the basic objective that we do today is to sell to EB. There are many other aspects of other functions that wind energy can perform, and this was an important session. In terms of technology and offshore, I'll take it together. I think the theme was about technologies of the future, and we said that it's not going to be a revolution, but it's going to be an evolution where we industrialize, where we milk what we have already done, and essentially take a Kaizen approach on taking some of those small initiatives, bringing them together to achieve a larger picture. On the same breath, on offshore, the panelists delved into reasons on what are the issues that we face today that mar the growth of offshore, and then talked about some of the solutions in terms of a single window clearance, and then a common platform to talk about how you can take this from a vision to a large-scale execution. And I particularly liked one anecdote which I've heard in the last 2 days, that single window should not be a Microsoft window which takes into 10 different windows, but a real single window clearance. And then capital, nothing is possible without money. And what we want is green money for green electrons. And on the advancing green finance in India, the panelists examined conditions that were required to make this investment climate more favorable, and how to bring a cohesive ecosystem to draw more investment, and more investment from variety of sources. So various forms of debt, various forms of, let's say, risk capital, and how to bundle it together and maximize the risk reward equation. So as you can see, it's almost impossible to sum up all the great deliberations, all the great knowledge, and all the insights that was discussed over the 2 days in just few minutes. But I want to leave you with this thought that Mr. Giri always says, that you might have, or we might be facing a lot of problems, and there are many ways to feel depressed and disheartened. But my friends, ladies and gentlemen, answer of this actually lies in the wind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hemkant. Summed up beautifully, but then we have been requested by MNRE to sum up the deliberations session-wise and come up with recommendations which will be given to MNRE. As you are all aware, Government of India, or MNRE, had fixed up a committee to find out as ways and methods as to how we are really going to go up there. And at the end of the session, Sir has been so kind to us. We will send the paper that has been sent by MNRE and our recommendation from MNRE, from IWTMA. And they have made out a 100-page document which has been circulated to members. And I'm sure positively things will be taken, and the deliberations and the minutes which is concluded in the last 2 days will also be given to MNRE. Now, to much awaited, the mantra from our Anand Kumar ji. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Giri, Mr. Limaye, and the organizers for giving me this opportunity to come back to my old friends. In fact, here my personal interest lied because I wanted to talk to my dear friends with whom I shared a cup of tea or lunch, and then I thought now I'll again share a few thoughts with them. Thank you once again. Wind Energy India 2022 has deliberated upon some of the very important topics as far as propagation of wind. I'm seeing the propagation of wind, or enhancement of the installation of wind capacity in the country. When I joined Ministry of Renewable Energy in the year 2017, wind was leading over solar. But today, if you see, solar is leading over wind. And somewhere, the wind has taken the back seat. Today, we have an installed capacity of around 40 gigawatt as far as wind is concerned. 10 more is under various stages of installation. Around 2.5 is under various stages of bidding. The target of 60 is nowhere near. Whereas if you see the overall figure of 175, we are already reaching 182 gigawatt with installed capacity or under implementation or under bidding. When we talk about enhancing the installation, the wind capacity installation, I think we have to collectively ponder that where we lacked and how we should move forward. After I left the ministry, I became wiser. And then I started thinking, I had just opened the windows when I was secretary, but when I left the ministry, I opened the windows and the doors, and I understood wind better. And today the perspective I'm giving you, I'm giving the view as a liberated renewable energy person. We have wind in 8 or 9 states. Wind is good in Gujarat, wind is good in Tamil Nadu. But in other states, and obviously Karnataka, but wind is not so good in other states. The one thing what we're doing is that we are calling the bids on a common universal ground. The bids are not being called state-wise. And whosoever, so we say you give us the best rate. Now, all bidders flock together and they go to either Gujarat or they go to Tamil Nadu or they go to Karnataka. And then the others follow. But what I would suggest is that we should do, if we have to go ahead and rationalize use of our wind potential, we must club the bidding. That if if the bid is coming out for 4 gigawatt, it should be 2 gigawatt from the moderate wind resources and 2 gigawatt from the good wind resources. And the bidder should be asked that, okay, if you are saying you do it maybe 300 megawatt in Maharashtra or in Madhya Pradesh, we can always identify that area, those areas. And 300 megawatt, you can come into Gujarat and wherever that's possible. So the wind resources in both these places would go and we'll get an optimized bid rate. So we have to now proactively think that how best we should utilize resources in the states where we have moderate wind or little lesser than the moderate wind. The good news is that with the efficiency of the wind turbines going up, we are able to catch or harness the potential of the so-called midterm states in a better way. So the potential of the Indians' wind potential would keep on increasing as the efficiency of the wind turbines and the height of the wind turbines will keep going up. So what I'm trying to say is that yes, we must harness the moderate wind. We also have the bidding coming together from the moderate and the high wind potential states. And third, that we must also increase the efficiency of our wind turbines to make moderate wind into a better wind. When I was in the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, we had realized, obviously with the friends from the industry, that solar alone cannot do. Solar cannot alone be the solution for providing the round-the-clock wind energy. So if we are looking at the answers for the peaking power, round-the-clock power, wind is must. And that's why we should never ever neglect wind energy in this country. And if we neglect wind energy in this country, it would be at our own peril. So we must bring out more bids for peaking power. We must bring out more bids for round-the-clock power. And we must make sincere efforts to harness wind energy and the wind potential of this country. We have been talking about the rate at which we are procuring wind power. Obviously, today the rate of procuring wind power is higher than the one we are procuring solar power. But if you see the gap, it is really not big enough to advocate use of coal. What we have to do is we have to use both these resources and do the round-the-clock power. And ultimately, we have to, when we do talk about the RTC, we must remove the base power which is being brought from the coal resources. Of late, when we are talking, I'm talking about the 2017, 18, 19, our wind manufacturing capacity was of the tune of around 10 gigawatt. But now more and more players have come in, and the capacity of manufacturing is going up. But that does not mean that the problems of manufacturers have gone. No. The problems still persist, but the capacity is increasing. And most of our wind friends, they are exporting windmills from here. And when we export wind turbines from country, obviously we generate more sources. So when we are getting resources through the export of, through the manufacturing of wind turbines and other component, so I think we should, in all sincerity, catalyze installation of capacity for wind manufacturing, and also try to identify the problems they are facing and remove those problems systematically. So one side we must support wind energy procurement. Second side, we also must support our wind manufacturing process. And third thing we must also do, bring in the latest technology to improve the efficiency of the turbines and harnessing more and more potential of wind in the country. Transmission, I was overhearing yesterday. I happened to be in a session where Mr. Giri was there. I reached there accidentally, and the transmission was talked about, that transmission takes place more time, and the putting up wind capacity takes around 18 months or so, and so is the solar. Rightly so. When we talked about 175 gigawatt to be installed by 2022, we almost had forgotten about the transmission issue. When our new renewable energy minister took over, Mr. R.K. Singh, it is under his guidance, we chalked out a plan of setting up a transmission, additional transmission of 66.7 gigawatt, identifying the wind-rich resources and the solar-rich resources. The problem is that since wind-rich resources and solar-rich resources are often at far distance, where there is no transmission existing as of today, we must plan for this transmission. In fact, today, if you're talking about the transmission, we must start planning for 2030 and not for 2023 and 24, 25. Yes, I know that it would take around 3 to 4 years for putting the transmission, but planning in this country takes a very long time. Where we do augment, you have to make the base transmission, then augmentation of transmission. So we should have a blueprint up to 2030 of the transmission. Now, when you're talking about transmission, offshore wind energy, are we also talking about the transmission? We have got around 70 gigawatt of offshore wind energy potential off the coast of Gujarat and Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. But have we made any blueprint on transmission to evacuate with that power from there? How we are going to do that? Are we going to have certain areas earmarked for development, maybe 5 gigawatt at one go and another 5 gigawatt another go? How will transmit this 1 gigawatt? How this will integrate with the main transmission lines? So I think we have to talk about it, and we have to finalize the blueprint on this. And we must be all ready with our bid documents, etc. Because, you know, off-the-shelf bid documents, whenever you require, just put it off the shelf and put in the tender and the transfer. Similarly, if we are going to exploit our wind potential in Leh, how we are going to talk about how we are going to solve the transmission issue. So that also has to be taken care of. And I'm in full agreement with the wind industry that when we talk about harnessing wind potential, we must in advance think about the transmission for evacuation of wind power. It is not good that the wind farm is ready and our transmission is not ready. The person who has already put the wind capacity, he suffers. So that should not be there. I must also congratulate the wind industry for developing the repository. It's going to be a big resource, and hats off to you people that you are collectively working, making the wind industry viable and going it forward and making a huge dent on the global scenario. So Giri sir, please accept my congratulations on for everyone who is involved in the wind industry for making this repository. Single window clearance, the Microsoft, brilliant. One window should not open into 10 multiple windows. You go to one place, get the land, get the transmission, get the issue of ROW sorted out. People keep on, first I remember in one particular state, when we had bid it out, everybody had gone to that state and they promised the land, that they will give the land, but ultimately the state government says, no, we don't have land, go somewhere else. And then it took us around 18 months to sort out that issue. Why can't we say that, okay, this land patch is available for the wind, or this land patch is available for hybrid, or this land patch is available for solar. So and once that is there, and then you link the transmission, ROW problem is sorted out, and then single window clearance for all purposes, and it should be single window as of out of the room rather than the Microsoft one. So I totally agree with it, that it must done. And another thing what we had done when I was secretary, I'm not saying that we did great things when I was secretary, this is a wrong thing to do, but there are certain things which we initiated. One was the project financing. And this project financing was fairly successful. And this becomes, this is a good tool to provide a right kind of incentive through financing for the wind projects. That somebody brings in the project, you give finance at a good rate, and then somebody who is buying your turbines, etc., he pays for that. So the project financing, there are many ways of project financing, but we must deal with the project financing in a very, with an open mind, and we must extend it, and we must not shy away trying with the new experiments. The problem is the inertia in our own system. And when we started talking about the project financing, there was a lot of inertia from the financial institutions. But then RERA came forward and they said, no, we will do it. And if you see that, still, I don't know whether there's 5% of the, if you make a prepayment to some of the financial institution, 5% penalty was being levied. But we said, no, there should not be 5%. 5% is too high a penalty to be levied on a project if you make a prepayment. It should be maximum maybe 1%, 1.5%. But I don't know, we had started that initiative, but I'm sure that must have been done. But if it has not been done, we all must collectively fight and say that the prepayment penalty must be reduced to a logical rate and not exorbitant rate like 5%. Bundling, I have already said that between the state and the moderate and the high potential states. And offshore wind, we all must concentrate, and though we don't have as good as offshore as in Europe, but still we have got a considerable wind potential, and we must make a very sincere effort to bring out first offshore wind, and with the transmission, of course, and make it a reality. And lastly, I would say that we are talking about noiseless wind turbines. But the noiseless wind turbines should not mean that noiseless wind industry. We must make appropriate noises. We must open dialogues. And the famous ad that, baat karne se hi baat banti hai. We must interact and talk about our problems constantly. Take up the issues with authorities and say that this issue we discussed in 2017. I don't mind if you discuss with me. And if you say 2000, I discussed with you, Anand Kumar, and 2018 again I discussed with him, and 2019 I discussed with him. He did do nothing. And this is still persisting, but please solve my problem. So we should not shy away in putting our agenda, which takes wind industry forward. And as I said earlier, that we must make appropriate noises. Thank you very much. And I'm really grateful to organizers for inviting me here and being with my friends once again here. Thank you very much. Good day.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard the mantra from Anand Kumar Saab. Quite a few lessons from his leaves from his diary. We will put it down as a part of our report. But one thing is for sure, that while we collectively work, as Sir said, if it is not done, it's not done, and I think you ought to make a noise. Thank you, sir. The crying child gets milk, and we will continue to cry, and one day come out with happiness to come and tell you as to what we have achieved. It's my bounden duty to propose a vote of thanks to all those who have really made this today conference a fantastic success, and tomorrow we will close the third day of the exhibition. A few of my thanks goes out to, they say charity starts with at home, to all my colleagues, members, extended family of IWTMA, the co-working group, the executive committee groups, and our trade fair partner, PDA Trade Fairs from Bangalore, with whom we worked together and we made this into a success. I thank them. I would also thank Mrs. Grover and Company, who have handled the entire audiovisual without a glitch, and I think that's something that is so beautiful, that the pandemic did have conflicts for people, some of them to travel, and it has been a wonderful journey. We also have Mrs. Plexus, who have done the entire infrastructure. And I would really say that when you go outside and have a look at the exhibition, forget for a minute that you're in Pragati Maidan. It really makes you feel that you're in an international space. So I think that is something very, very beautiful. I would like to thank ITPO for providing the space in spite of their challenges of having AHAR, which is running for the last 2 days and then which is going to run for a couple of more days. We have had wonderful support from the media, both in our press conference, both in Delhi as well as in Chennai, as well as media that was present in the 2 days. It's my great pleasure to thank speakers, exhibitors, delegate, government officers who are taking time off their busy schedule and come over here. And I would say this is formal closure of the conference. As per calendar, it's a biennial function, so we will soon announce a date for 2024. However, both IWTMA and PDA Trade Fairs, who are partners of Windergy, are looking at as to how we can engage with the community in 2023, so that the more we meet, the more we network, the more we meet with the OEMs, the component manufacturers, the EPC players, and the investment community and the government, this 500 will not happen. So it's just not wanting to have a conference, but I think a meaningful dialogue. As Sir said, if we are not, we have talked to Anand Kumar Saab, and if something has not happened in 2017, and we're talking about the same thing in 18-19, I'll take another 30 seconds. I have my good friend, Mr. U.B. Reddy, who said that in the state of Karnataka, in Koppal, where 1,200 or 1,000 megawatts was bid, it was bid, and the transmission or the infrastructure was not ready. 2 years' time is given for the project to be completed. The 2 years has lapsed, and the Koppal infrastructure has not come up. So I think this is a great lesson we have learned from you, sir. So with this few words, I would like to thank everyone for your patience and for your time. Thank you. Jai Hind.
So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we draw curtains to the two-day conference. Yes, the exhibition is going to be on even tomorrow to pay a visit there. And let's collectively work towards the growth and the involvement of the wind sector. Greater opportunities come in with as we move towards the offshore also. So wishing you all more business and yes, more greater wins towards and more greener footprints you're able to cast in this sector. Thank you to all of you for joining us in these discussions, deliberations. Thank you and have a good day.